Really, that's great.
Right, welcome everybody.
We don't like that.
Welcome everybody. This is Houston's Bookshop, one of the few remaining radical bookshops in the whole of the country, not just London. We promote all sorts of radical ideas, and such as one contained in this book, Hanoi Guide to Global Surveillance, by Robin here, and that's it. Robin will now tell you all about his book. Okay. Right. Thank you, Mo. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for braving the terrible weather. As Mo said, my name is Robin Tudge. I'm a journalist and author. And I'd just like to thank Mo and William for hosting this evening's event, and also to Nick, who I'd originally arranged this with, but isn't here. But, so thank you one and all, and welcome. As said, I'm the author of this book, the No-Nonsense Guide to Global Surveillance, which came out just last year. And I'm going to talk this evening broadly about the subject of surveillance in a global context, various contexts. Excuse me a second. Just to one of the issues with the concepts of surveillance as such, it's very broad as a concept. It's very pervasive. It's very enveloping. It is extremely complex. I mean, it permeates and pervades so many facets of our daily life and what we've done and what we're going to do for reasons, both benevolent and malign, and very often startlingly in ways that we're, well, very worryingly unaware of until we find out, oh my God, is this the case? But so I just start off with a very short definition of surveillance, it being a very broad abstract term. But in the main, for me, the way I conduct it through the book, it encompasses the various methods and means employed by individuals, institutes, companies and states, usually by way of some manner of tools and technology, or increasingly technology these days, of gathering, recording, sifting and then redistributing data of any kind and any ilk, and then using it or selling the data or applying it in whatever form or format in order to achieve some other kind of end, be it in order to enact some fantastic all-encompassing life-saving government policy, or just make a bit of money, or just sake of tittle-tattle about your neighbours because it's amusing, that kind of thing. The talk itself I'm going to do for you this evening comes in three parts. First of all, I'm going to do a very brief overview illustrating the all-pervasiveness of surveillance in our everyday lives and its complexity, and this will throw up a few themes which will recur throughout the talk. The talk will then go on to look at how we as citizens and consumers encounter surveillance in our everyday lives, but also just accept, and think, yeah, that's all right, particularly through the media. Then also how we more proactively engage in new areas of surveillance as they come up, things that have become well, from nowhere to the norm in the past few years, like Facebook and Twitter and other facets like that. So, first off, as in the manner of, in order to prove who I am, as we're increasingly asked to do in the modern day and age, I'm just going to, well, I've already emptied my pocket, as I'm asked, and I think you'll find that most of you have one of these, which is an Oyster card, and I use this obviously to commute around London, tapping in and out. It's incredibly convenient. They're used, Oyster cards or cards like them are used worldwide, cities around the world. In Hong Kong they're called Pearl. And they're supplied by one American company, or they were originally supplied by an American company called Cubic Corporation, which actually, for the most part, specialises in transport and defence systems. One of its major products is an air combat training system platform, which is sold to the US military and any other military who's got the money and sort of clearance in order to accept it. So it's one of these things where it's a kind of, from a military company, you have a rather good civilian spin-off of where you get very convenient tap in and out commuting. It touches on globalisation, but also how military companies underpin a lot of areas where surveillance enters our daily lives for the most benign of banal of reasons, getting to work and back. So it's quick and cheap travel for us. For the government, it's a means to monitor our daily commuter flows, and from that they can get whatever information they want and say, well, we could build a new station here, or we can close that one down so not many people go through it, that kind of thing. But also it means our individual journeys are tracked. Unless you have an anonymised card, all our journeys are tracked, and that's just data which is handy to anybody in particular. We lose our anonymity, and it's This touches on lack of privacy. It's just surrendered for the sake of a cheaper journey, because if you buy a cash ticket, you're paying twice as much. So there's an element of coercion there as well. Also contained within the card, and contained within many other cards, is a radio frequency identity chip, which contains all of the information about you and the amount of money you got on the card and various other details. And that's what bounces taps in and out, and that's what identifies you against the sensors in the London Underground. And in this particular card, when it first came out, the chip that the radio frequency identity contracts to RIFID, the RIFID chip that was in this card was called a MyFair chip. And the trouble was, this had been hacked. It was proven hacked. The Dutch government had exactly the same chip. They were using it in order to, for civil servants to access various ministries where the Dutch government resides, tap in and out. And Dutch hackers hacked it, so this thing's bust. The entirety of the security system for access to these buildings is now compromised. You're going to have to issue some kind of new system overnight, because the whole thing was bust. And the Dutch government was extremely obviously worried and said, oh my god. When it was pointed out to London Underground that there was, the chips had been compromised and could be compromised, they kind of went, well, who cares, because it's just people commuting to work, it's not that big a deal, we don't think. But what that really relates to also is you then have a single company, Cubic Corporation, supplying a chip on a global scale. So the globalized company supplying global chip to some kind of global standard, which can then be hacked, and that creates a global problem. And this is becoming something that's endemic throughout modern surveillance. There's also a RIFID chip in this credit card. Now, I got this credit card from Barclays, and they gave it to me after they'd vetted me extensively through various databases for the risk that I pose, or supposedly pose, in my ability to pay back the debt, or the credit, whichever way they want to turn it, that they've kind of entitled me to with this card. Now, post 9/11, the United States government sought to use the same algorithms that have been used for credit checking people and apply it to what the kind of risk that people pose in terms of their proclivity or propensity to go and blow something up. It was to check for terrorists. And so they said, it's so successful in the financial world, we can find out who the dangerous people are in the normal world. For the most part, then, we want to take actually people's credit card information, sift that, and try and work out from that who's going to go and blow something up. Now, there was quite widespread backlash to this in the United States amongst civilians who said, well, notwithstanding we're going to put up with some things in the wake of 9/11, we're not going to put up with this. That and the fact that the system didn't work led to it being pulled. But this is just one idea. This is just sort of one foray that the US government made to say, well, how best, what can we do here in order to try and find out what people are doing, what they could be like. I've also got, carrying around me, mobile phone, which I use to call people worldwide, and I also use to tap into the internet, and again, it's incredibly convenient, and whilst I didn't have a mobile phone that was capable of doing any of these things only a year ago, now it's central to my everyday life, and I'm tapping into it all the time. It's incredibly convenient, and it's sort of embedded in what I do in my daily existence. But it's also a tracking device. The security services can enable phones to track you even when you turn it off. This is in the capability that the CIA developed some years ago. You can willingly have yourself tracked if you sign up to Google Latitude, and you give Google Latitude, which is one of the products of Google, your mobile number, and those of your friends if they agree, and then you can watch yourselves with little maps online where your friends are and all, and it's incredibly jolly and cute and fun. So you can track your own position or your friends. Had this been an iPhone, which I don't think it is, your location would have been automatically tracked by Apple. They just took it upon themselves to do this. They didn't actually ask anybody who had an Apple iPhone whether they wanted it. There's no consent. And that's another huge element of surveillance in the modern world, is the idea of consent or the lack of. We're just going to do it, let people find out, and if they get upset, then we might address it, but if you don't know, you can't consent. Also raises the question, with all this data, comes from various things. Say I'm using this, I use it to go on the internet, and I use it to look at Amazon, and I use it to look at Facebook, and I use it to look at Google. Now, these three companies are ostensibly American companies. And under the 2001 Patriot Act, US government agencies, from the FBI to the CIA to the National Security Agency, Defense Intelligence Agency, any and all of the above, have the right simply to demand that any US company hand over all of the data that they've accrued from working abroad. I don't think they can make such a demand within the confines of whatever the United States is, however that's defined. But certainly if they're working abroad, they can say, well, you're an American company working abroad, all of the data you've accrued in the line of your business, just surrender it to us. Now American companies working on the internet, that's pretty much got global reach. All of the information they've got, they just surrender to the US agencies without any justification at all. They just say, that's the law, that's the Patriot Act, hand it over. So they do. And Barack Obama, great guy who's made out to be the Patriot Act, he renewed, I think in 2009. He just went, yeah, that's a good law, great, on with it. What this does is it enables the US intelligence agencies to treat everybody around the world, everybody within reach of accessing these websites for their own whatever reason, as a suspect. And this is another massive problem with modern surveillance. It's the way it's used to facilitate the idea that if we can track everybody, we should. Why wouldn't you want to do that? And if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. That is what underpinned, in no small measure, Tony Blair's, because it came from him in the first instance, plan for what became the Data Retention Directive, the European Union 2005 Data Retention Directive, which sought also to mandate that private telecommunications companies kept records of all of the texts, all of the phone calls, all of the emails, and all of the websites that I visited. All of this data would be kept and retained and sifted by security services, presumably across the European Union and any of their affiliates, as and any time they wanted to do this. So, thanks to Tony Blair, he said it was he said it was to keep us safe, under the idea that if it stopped you from being killed, in order to enjoy the rights of freedom, notwithstanding that I'm taking them away, in order to enjoy being free, you have to be alive to do it. And the prerequisite of government in the modern age is to keep people alive. Now, whether that's in some kind of global prison state is kind of secondary to the fact you're alive. This is the compromise that we have to put up with. Or so people of his ilk argued. You then have, it's actually quite ironic. In fact, it's heavily ironic. Anyway, I've got my co-op loyalty card. This also has some form of co-op loyalty card.
Oh, right.
Yes. And I go to the co-op shop and I tuck it in and I get the points from it. But this is another database tracking my purchases and for which I'm rewarded for my loyalty to co-op, my slavish loyalty to this almighty supermarket. And they give me cheap discounts. But it's also data that can be used by any organisation that has the right that can buy such information. Councils, district councils in this country have been known to buy data from Tesco loyalty cards, in order to enact whatever policies in their local area, because the information is so much more up to date and live than information from the census. And you think, well, that's good and useful. But when I went to Tesco and bought things and put on my loyalty card, I don't remember giving them license to then sift all the data and then enact some kind of policy on the back of that. But there you go. You sort of find out and think, well, that's kind of clever. What the RIF is, the radio frequency identity chips in these cards and various other devices enable also, is for me to be tracked and scanned as I go around town or anywhere where there might be scanners, where there might be a network of scanners. If you've seen the Minority Report, that was the sort of basic idea behind it, although they went for retina scans. But you don't need to have things that scanners to track the retina. You just need to be able to carry anything with a RIFID in it, and you can have small scanners all around. And that was the basic idea when these radio frequency identity chips were first introduced into cards, was in shopping malls in the United States, in order that they would have these scanners around and they could direct advertising at you. And again, there are huge concerns about people's privacy, and it kind of spanned it up to a point. Up to the point, you see where the logic goes, where these things, where Benetton had the idea of putting radio frequency identity chips into women's lingerie. And literally they're trying to get into your pants. In order that you'd go into a shop and they could identify you, and the store clerk could come up and say, well, I know you bought these things in the past, whatever, if I aim these things at you now in the future, incredibly personalised, targeted marketing. And what this led to a reaction amongst Benetton shoppers, the Rather Go Naked campaign, saying, well, basically, how dare you, this is gross. And so they dropped it. Whether it comes back in some other form in some other way, we don't know. But they said, oh yes, we're sorry, how stupid of us, how could we be so insensitive, and they put it to one side. China, meanwhile, everybody in China has to carry an identity card, and what they're now doing, if it's not already in place, for the billion-plus identity cards that are in circulation in the country, is they are putting radio frequency identity chips into identity cards. In all of that, obviously you can just tap and scan, but then it becomes a very subtle way of keeping power. If you have a crowd of people, say, protesting, and there are a lot of protests in China, you don't actually have to send in the riot brigade to bludgeon them to death or chase them home, etc. You need one policeman with a scanner to wander through the crowd, tapping in, beep, 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 get everybody's information, go back home, and later on, over following weeks and months, they'll get a knock on the door in the middle of the night and they'll just be taken away. It's much more effective. It's much more, you need much fewer police personnel in order to carry out this kind of operation. It's much, not better PR, but it's very bad PR if you have to send in the riot squad. You know, look, it makes the government look bad, it makes it look bad internationally. If you can just sort of close these things down subtly, oh, great, you wouldn't want to do that. It just keeps things quiet. Now, the subject of identity cards is where my interest first took off into surveillance. I think it was 2006 when in this country the law was passed under Tony Blair for everybody to have identity cards, which is a government version of a loyalty card. And probably the only good thing that this coalition government has done, in my opinion, first thing they did when they got in was get rid of identity cards, which is great. And then everything else, well, that's up to them. I can't get into that now. But what we would have had, what the card was intended to be used for, was every time we wanted to go to the post office, or go to the off licence, or go to the pub, buy alcohol, buy petrol, buy cigarettes, or go to hospital and prove that we were a citizen of this country and not some thieving foreigner on sort of NHS tourist type thing, or go to the bank and get a mortgage, which is a daily event. You need to carry this identity card and prove everything. And the list for what we'd have to use through this card would have been ever lengthening, to prove that we were legit, to prove that we weren't some kind of undeserving foreigner or crook. And this is what the government was having us believe was synonymous. If you were a foreigner, you're therefore suspect. So if you weren't foreign, you'd have to prove it. And you think, well, okay. And all of these transactions, along with any others, the private sector could have said we demand the ID card be used too. All of them all this information was going to be uploaded onto one almighty, vast, hackable, corruptible, single database known as the National Identity Register, which the government and its agents and any affiliates of any kind would have been able to access and sift at all times. So it's the most astonishing tracking device. The card itself wasn't ours, even though we had to pay for it, even though we were mandated to have one, and we were mandated to pay for it, and while in effect we couldn't have lived without it, assuming it would work, assuming it wasn't hacked, assuming it wasn't cloned, assuming it wasn't stolen or broken or anything else, which meant that when you left our house that morning it actually was unable to function on a daily basis. It still wasn't your card. It was the state's. It was the property of the state, and they had the right to revoke it at any time they want, particularly if they thought you were a suspicious person. They're going to take your card back, shut down your life by remote control, and then you can come and complain to us if you can prove who you are. Now, the identity card and the National Identity Register have gone, more or less. But they are part of a broader programme which is still ongoing in some form, electronic government, or condensed e-government, which seeks to have all the data held in us by separate government departments, HMRC or the Health Service or school records, all this stuff. And effectively you need to take all this information, take it out of paper records, which are probably long gone anyway, digitise it, and amalgamise, if that's the word. Take it out from these separate silos, these separate databases, and just push it all together. So in effect, creating all the data from all the departments and agencies, you can create these great big single personal profiles of each citizen. And the data would be shared across departments and agencies, and the data would also be shared across the European Union. And the idea is, obviously this kind of process of information technology, governments would theoretically have speedier access to way more data, way more up-to-date data, and with that they could better coordinate the delivery of services to us as individuals, and they could better use resources and that kind of thing. What this stems from, the whole program stems from, was in 1994 the G7, as it was, agreed to implement what had become the Worldwide Information Society. And what this has developed into, the path towards e-government in this country, it comes under the sort of broad umbrella aegis of involving 192 states. It's the United Nations e-government program. If you look up www.unpan.org, unpan.org, this is a program which, as the United Nations says, will obviously bring IT to the world and transform all state operations and institutions. And when I saw this, I thought, well, transform is really quite a powerful word. And in fact, the government's program, the British government's program towards e-government was under the Transformational Government Program. And I thought, transform, this refers also to citizens as customers, as if the government was some kind of supermarket, where indeed the ID card is the loyalty card. And we citizens would have these, as already described, these kind of digital montages created about us. But the plan was, as a senior civil servant said when the Transformational Government Program was rolled out, this would create, quote, a single source of truth about us all, based on our behaviour, experiences, beliefs, needs and rights. That is to say, the state would seek to know and presume to know us better than we know ourselves, and in partnership with its private partners, they'd preemptively be able to provide us with social services or the attention of the police or whatever else it is they thought that we need before we even knew we need it. So you're sitting at home watching TV and there's a bang on the door going, "You're a bit plebby, now we think we need to do something about it." And all of this would be delivered in ways which would be, quote again, invisible to the public. And you think, how could something so banal as, I don't know, bringing IT to the world of bureaucracy, and something so sort of intentionally benevolent, one might think, actually be so sinister? I looked into this further, and one estimate, and it is only an estimate, and all these estimates vary widely, is that they estimate there's some 700 databases, public, private, global, in this country and beyond, wherever, which hold data on the average Briton. And I thought, I don't know how many of these I could name. And I don't know how many of these have been compromised. And I don't know how many of these adhere to the most basic requirements under whatever law, European, British, global, if there are any, of data protection and privacy. But these databases exist, and the data is out there. Now I found all this out in my work as a journalist. And journalism is a form of surveillance. I am a reporter. It is my job to report on people and whatever's going on. Now does that make me a snitch? Reporters produce daily digests of information and data for the world to read. And you can see how many stories are in any newspaper are surveillance themed. If you pick up, well, the Evening Standard or particularly the Metro, and you look through and you try and gauge how many of the adverts for them are for computers or for mobile phones, technologies that enable us to be tracked and have a wonderfully convenient life, but it's tracking in some form or other, an information upload, and they're targeted at us or what they think is a tech-savvy audience based on the ABCs of marketing and this, that and the other. There's all very kind of directed and nuanced. Adverts, mobile phones enable us to communicate, and because we're presumed to be part of the kind of tech-savvy credit-loaded readership based on marketing demographics. Demographics built on mass consumer surveillance. Much of journalism involves spycraft. If you think of the old image of a man in a Mac and a trilby hat, hanging around, taking notes on some corner, asking questions. Now it could be a spy, or it could be a reporter. And I thought, well, why is Private Eye called Private Eye? Of course, you know. And actually, I think Private Eye's good, but it's part of that same ilk. Both journalists and spies like to disguise themselves to go undercover into political rooms and workplaces. Both will befriend, bribe, sweet-talk and bully a target's friends or colleagues or family and acquaintances for information. And they'll buttress this information increasingly with whatever information or data or whatever they like to call it that they manage to filch from Google or Facebook or Twitter or LexisNexis and all of these other enormous, well in effect becoming enormous public databases or public to a greater or lesser extent. Both journalists and spies will sit in a car for days right outside a target's home or maybe just down the road with a telephoto lens. Both will rummage through a target's dustbins and they'll trawl through their phone bills or they'll tap the target's phone and they'll hack voicemail. If the press don't do this directly, then they'll hire private investigators who are often ex-police to do this job, former surveillance, military and police officers. And they'll get the information and then they'll put it together and they'll make some kind of horribly salacious, sensationalised report and they'll sell it at great profit and hurrah, jobs are good. And this brings me on to the man who we all know who's done so much to traduce the profession of journalism and to make these methods integral to modern journalism as we know it. The main proprietor and the editorial director of the global behemoth News Corps, Rupert Murdoch, who over the best part of half a century now has built up this global empire of muckraking to his own immense gain and power, using this media machine to first and foremost further build and propagate his empire, but also then to project his right-wing prejudices and sacrifice any and every moral for the purpose of profit by way of strong-arming and threatening and blackmailing, in effect, politicians the world over, saying you're going to go along with this, otherwise I'm going to trash your career, you'll never get back into office again. And his power is such, and his favour is so desperately sought by politicians, both left and right, that you cannot win without him. And this was made staggeringly clear, not just as his power rose, particularly in this country under the Thatcher and then John Major, but then with Tony Blair, I think in 94, or maybe 95, but one of his first acts, having become the new Labour leader, was to go and fly to visit a Murdoch in Australia, and as it were to pay suzerainty to this man's immense power, and say, it's alright, when you get in, we'll just do anything you say, anything you want, you can have it, just leave it alone, or further off back. To the extent these days we also have a discredited former News of the World editor, Andy Coulson, was the top PR man for our current Prime Minister, who likes to go horse riding with people like Rebecca Brooks. Rebecca Brooks is quite extraordinary. I mean, what is she being done for at the minute? Is it perverting the course of humanity or something like that? So what the News of the World scandal rumbled over years, or as we're learning and the story continues to unfold. The hacks, or the phones rather, some 3,000 noteworthies, MPs, footballers, police, murdered children, were hacked. Jessica Chapman and Holly Wells, victims of 9/11, information was hacked. Soldiers fallen in Afghanistan and Iraq, phones hacked. News Corps staff were duly employed by police forces, or senior police officers also, we realised, or we discovered, were bribed for information or coerced into stopping investigations into what News Corps was doing. One reporter is dead, others are in jail, many more hopefully will go. I think the News of the World itself has been closed down. It's not inconceivable yet, and one might hope rather that this could actually, this episode as it continues to unravel, and News Corps may yet implode by one way or another, the culmination of Rupert Murdoch's life's work, and all this 5 decades of work, this could actually be the eulogy to his empire. One would hope so. But too many of us bought into it. We bought his papers. We watched his programs. We bought his newspapers, or too many people have bought his newspapers with a diet of tits, beer, and hate, and racism, and whatever else. And it was all fun and amalgamated and put into a paper and sold on a daily basis because this is what the people wanted apparently. And this is all part of a free society. It's just to have a sort of diet of semi-pornographic stuff chucked to them on a daily basis. And I think what the media has also done, because it's fun, unfortunately, what the media has also had a hand in, wittingly or no, is in normalising surveillance in our daily lives, and in normalising for us the actions of the security services and their influence and direction on our daily lives. And it gets grey areas of the levels of complicity, whether it's the media and the intelligence services and the government all work together in order to serve their own purposes or to look after one another in one way or form. I mean, like the lie-filled dossiers about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction capabilities were, for the most part, naively reported without question by much of the press in this country, the United States, because journalists and their editors had a great innate trust into what they thought was, or into the integrity of the security services' work. And it wouldn't have occurred to them, particularly in a time of war, that dossiers could, or intelligence from these sacrosanct intelligence agencies could be hijacked and adulterated by self-serving gangsters like Tony Blair and George Bush and all their oil industry friends. So this is inconceivable, surely to go. That said, Rupert Murdoch readily went in with the plot. It gets to the point now where even something like Sir John Scarlett is now on the board of the Times newspaper. From another direction, you have the CIA rewrites regularly Wikipedia entries, we assume, to shape wiki readers' opinions as to how they see things. Well, I don't know if this is true, I'll look it up on Wikipedia, oh, well this, that and the other. As per the CIA, thank you very much. Politicians obviously use the intelligence agencies and the press to their own ends. Drive to normalisation, as we're seeing with this recent release of the Skyfall film, involves children very, very, very much. The FBI, the National Security Agency, and the CIA in the United States, they have websites on their websites, which anybody can visit, and they have kids' pages. Councils in this country have employed 7-year-olds as what they call street champions, who they give James Bond-style numbers, which they then use to identify themselves when they phone up the council and say, I've just spotted somebody, so-and-so, Mr. Smith at number 10, fly tipping, or his dog was found and he didn't clear it up, or he dropped a cigarette butt. And for this, these children are given a reward if a successful prosecution or something comes out of it. Children are increasingly being encouraged to monitor one another. In 2009, boys at Birkdale High School in West Midlands, I think, were tasked by their teachers to draw up a list of those 5 boys who they thought were high flyers, but also the potential troublemakers. And this information is going to be put onto the school's behaviour database. But then see also, with this, as the Skyfall film shows, James Bond has become central to our sort of, well, a lot of our sort of, the greatness of what we perceive Britain to be. I mean, he was even a mascot of sorts when he was wheeled out in that skit with the Queen at the Olympics opening. Right, so we've got the royal family, and then we've got exemplar of the intelligence agencies licensed to go out and do everybody over. And isn't that a great thing? And so through the sort of connivance of mass media and culture, we come to like and admire spies as a positive, benevolent presence, a sexy presence. They're fun. Now in the United States, presidents come and presidents go. But for over 40 years, at the helm of the FBI was run by J. Edgar Hoover, who was ostensibly protecting the American people from communist Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan. Well, that's the image he cultivated. That's the image that he manipulated the media very strongly to influence politicians and the public in order to end up serving his own purposes. However, J. Edgar Hoover was a man of unquestionable ambition and unfathomable malevolence who corrupted the FBI to serve his own personal, vicious, petty hatred, his own right-wing, extreme right-wing agendas, and he wielded tremendous hidden power. He had evidence falsified for Joe McCarthy's House of Un-American Activities Committee that ruined the careers of thousands of people in Hollywood and beyond, and caused untold numbers of suicides. He subjected civil rights groups, women's rights groups, peace groups, homosexuals, environmentalists, Nation of Islam members, black nationalists to illegal wiretapping, break-ins, planting of false evidence, informers and infiltrators and agents who then themselves incited criminal acts. Some of this is very redolent to what we've been hearing about exposés of British intelligence agencies, particularly with things, organisations like Plain Stupid in the past 2 or 3 years. Back to Hoover. He subjected John F. Kennedy, Marilyn Monroe, John Lennon and Jane Fonda to constant monitoring, blackmail, smears, the newspapers and yellow journalists lapped up. This is brilliant, another exposé, thank you very much. We're not going to tell anyone where we got it from, we're just going to put it on the front page. Hoover hated Martin Luther King Jr. so much for having the temerity of being a black man demanding his rights that he sent a lie-filled dossier about King's personal conduct to Sweden in order to try and spanner King's chances of winning the Nobel Peace Prize. President Truman warned that the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover could become a citizen spy system like the KGB or the Gestapo, and every president hated him. But Hoover, by his own nefarious purposes, managed to get the consistent support of Congress and the Senate and the President and the White House to keep him in office, and only left throughout all of these years, and he only left office in 1972 because he was dead. Nobody could fire him. As President Nixon fumed, he had files on everybody. God damn it. And it kind of becomes quite ironic when you look at how the FBI came to be so warped, that now the FBI is central to, certainly on the American side, investigations into what News Corp's been doing under Rupert Murdoch. It is a kind of, obviously a modern commercial parallel to Hoover. But what it also doubly goes to serve is the man atop such a surveillance machine can and will become, in effect, untouchable, and can and will become totally corrupted by their own position of power. Whereas Hitler and Stalin's power also rested very much on people's terror of the Gestapo and the KGB. They didn't actually have to do anything, it's just the idea that they were there at all to stop people from doing a lot. Hoover, nonetheless, made the American people, and supposedly the world's most powerful democracy, overlook the FBI's ever-increasing threat to their freedom, and ever-increasingly malevolent presence in their daily lives, by having his G-men, as they were called, as his agents, glamorized through gushing articles that Hoover had placed in the press, through heroic radio programs, fictionalizing or based on accounts, through films and later TV shows, the scripts for which J. Edgar Hoover himself read and doctored, and sent back saying, yeah, that's great, that puts us in the best possible light, thank you so much. Hoover's own mug appeared on 4 front covers of Time magazine, a feat of which he was incredibly proud, and G-men were merchandised on toy guns, badges, and children's pajamas. Folks in the United States associated the Feds with freedom and fun. Similarly, these days, people now associate the concept of Big Brother, not with the godlike leader of some Christ-awful dystopian totalitarian police state, Oceana in Orwell's 1984, but with a stupid globalized TV show in which nobodies fart and flirt for several weeks in a 24/7 surveillance prison viewed by the world, and for which the worst behaved get the greatest rewards of fame and celebrity from the riches provided by the tabloid newspapers. It makes good copy, so therefore let's chuck it out. People don't think it's Big Brother watching you so much, it's them watching Big Brother. And you've seen, you can note how the program itself became corrupted over the years. It shifted from what was in the first instance, in the first series in this country, as a social experiment into, what are a load of people going to do when they're in a confined space all day? Well, they sat around and they talked about books. It was incredibly civilized, it was kind of urbane. In fact, it was boring. Only the appearance of Nasty Nick made it kind of good TV because he was such a villain. But he stuck out for that. And it's like, wow, what's this guy going to do next? And in the end, he was brought down. He had his own comeuppance. It was fantastic. But what it's become increasingly is a series of sort of convoluted mind games and torture set up by faceless producers who trying to outdo themselves in terms of shock value, and therefore increase ratings and increase profitability and advertising revenue and newspaper coverage, etc. And this really exemplifies what can happen, the intoxication of power and the blind pursuit of chasing ratings or chasing profit. And what Big Brother program has also helped buy this at the moment, but it's fostered an ambition in children, as one researcher found, just to be famous for what doesn't matter. Or rather, indeed, not just be famous, but be infamous. Because you go on Big Brother, completely trash the place, and I'm like, that's great, that's hilarious. I mean, it is a load of money. And Jade Goody kind of exemplified that. I mean, she did turn it around, and she died young, and it's terribly tragic, but she's probably the worst behaviour of all, but also profited tremendously from it. And this is kind of heavily ironic, bitterly ironic, because in the real world, all enveloping surveillance is there and used in order to punish bad behaviour. Increasingly, before you've even done anything, it's used in a preemptive capacity. And that also is ironic, because as you'll see, every new tranche of surveillance that's introduced in order to watch people often impacts things in very unpredictable ways, which are at odds with why the surveillance system was set up in the first place. I.e. the very presence of surveillance confounds the aim to which it was put. The fact that I'm watching you makes you behave in a different way. So suddenly, the entire experiment is flawed. And we can see this, for example, from CCTV. We have, in this country, several million CCTV systems all over the place, partly, we're told, to fight crime, or when it doesn't actually work in terms of fighting crime. For the most part, it doesn't, despite numerous technological advances being forever made. It's installed not to fight crime, but to deter crime. There's a camera there that'll stop people doing something. And when that doesn't work, because actually you do see people doing things by way of the CCTV, it obviously didn't deter the person whose footage there is of him doing whatever it is. It's installed because it actually just makes people feel safer. However, time again, turn on the TV, go to some back-end channel, or actually no ITV even, and you'll find some kind of cheap police show which shows CCTV of crimes being committed around the world. And it's all sort of compressed into half an hour, but some people might come away convinced that actually the world is a terribly dangerous place. And all these things that happen nowhere near us happen, and therefore it's dangerous, and therefore, oh my God, what are we going to do? Oh my God, we need more CCTV, we need more police. And you kind of find yourself just accepting ever more surveillance and going to leave us alone. And because I go around and I see CCTV and I think, oh well, that'll deter something from happening, or even if something's kicking off, I won't intervene because somebody's watching the CCTV and the police will turn up maybe eventually, and I don't actually want to get involved in this and maybe have myself done for whatever it is. There's some kind of evidence of my interaction, I don't know how that's going to pan out, I'll just leave them to it. There's CCTV, get on with it. So I kind of disempower myself. Palpably, CCTV does not deter crime. We see the results on TV. Indeed, some of it is staged by children who want to get on TV, or rather get on YouTube. CCTV enables us to see the results, as it were, of Big Brother, the program, on our street. And it begs the question, does it deter crime, or does it actually help facilitate it, or incite it? Does CCTV reassure people, or does it alarm them by showing them things they'd otherwise never have seen? Or does CCTV protect the public, or does it disempower them because it stops them from doing things they might otherwise have done? Does it serve the public, or does it serve the makers of CCTV, the police, the security services, and anybody else? We then come on to things like personal disclosure websites, or social media, like Facebook, which invites us to expose ourselves, in effect, second by second, and also to watch other people doing the same thing. And the intoxicating effect of the internet is because it's this anodyne screen that sits there and you have your webcam or whatever. A lot of people end up doing a lot more things that they would never otherwise do in public, because there's a disassociation. They are no longer in public. There's just a screen. There's just this sort of virtual theatre or audience out there. So they think it doesn't matter. And we play up to the camera and we'll post a dubious comment or post some kind of joke or photo from whatever fleeting flight of fancy we had. And we'll show sides of ourselves that we might otherwise never show, or might otherwise hitherto never have thought were there, never had the opportunity. And then we post stuff and then we forget it, and we go, well, and there's no consequence, there's no face-to-face problem, there's no one who says, oh my God, what the hell are you doing? And you think, oh, that's great, leave it alone, and you go away, get on with your life. And you overlook the fact that the internet not only doesn't understand irony, the internet, as it were, doesn't get jokes. If you tell a joke, if you're Matthew Woods, for example, and you tell a joke, however sick it is, about April Jones on Facebook, you will get caught and you will get done and you will get sent down. Quite right too, maybe, maybe not. The internet doesn't forget, as it were. There's a record out there of everything, and somebody will find it one day. And President Obama once warned teenagers, in the YouTube age, whatever you do, it will be pulled up again later, sometime in your life. When you're young, you make mistakes, or do stupid stuff. Or, as one frustrated father told his son in a little YouTube video, his son was having an almighty teenage tantrum and throwing himself on the bed, getting it's so unfair, oh God, oh God, oh God. And the father comes in the back of the room and says, oh, for Christ's sake, son, what do you think you're doing? Sees the webcam on, and he goes, you're recording this? You're filming this for the internet? You're making an ass of yourself for all eternity. And then the thing went black, but it was just a brilliantly sort of pithy summation of this youth stupidity. And of course there are consequences, as we've seen with Matthew Wood and his joke about 8-year-old Jones. He got done. But he goes further. Universities and employers use Facebook to judge who they'll take on, who they're going to fire, who they're going to discipline. Canadian Natalie Blanchard, for example, was on long-term sick leave with depression from her job at IBM. But insurance giant Manulife, who provided her health cover, found Facebook photos of her having fun. Now, they were old photos, but Manulife concluded she wasn't depressed and therefore she was fit to work and they stopped to benefit. We're told that the rioters in England who were organised themselves via Facebook, BlackBerry and Twitter and various other means would also be tracked down and caught through the same technologies, yet that gave them the access to each other to enable them to riot and take inspiration and say, right, let's go and smash the place up because they're doing it all over the country. All of this information, of course, don't forget, ends up in the hands by the 2001 Patriot Act in the hands of US intelligence agencies, or under the United Nations European Union Data Retention Directive in 2005, or as we see as upcoming, we have the Communications Bill, or the Snoopers Charter, which is another stage of the same sort of facilitation to access all of this data at all times by the government and its agencies, public or private. But through its endless jolly applications, Facebook's now billion users, or profile users as it has, are voluntarily handing over real-time information for the police, the spies, employers, marketing firms, and everybody else into creating a database of information, real-time live information that the Stasi, the KGB, or the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover could only ever have dreamed of. And we do it for free because it's fun. And it provides much free copy for tired journalists who I know to find stories or fill out their articles. And that reduces the need, therefore, for any official sources of tittle-tattle, which, funny enough, ends up reducing something like Rupert Murdoch's staff, as they have less need to go to somebody like J. Edgar Hoover to get salacious rubbish. We found it online. Yeah, thanks very much. We use that. Now, for me, good journalism is about holding to account those in power. That's what I think Private Eye does pretty well. But one of the greatest coups in journalism of the modern, recent months, if not years, has been WikiLeaks. That's moved itself into becoming, WikiLeaks is WikiLeaks. I mean, it's what it's exposed is quite extraordinary. And possibly its greatest coup, in amongst the many it's had, were the embassy cables revelations, which cast WikiLeaks into the middle of its own incredible story of oppression and illustrates, actually, the power and reach of modern global surveillance networks and how they can be used, like that, to channel fundamentals of free speech, justice, and the presumption of innocence. In short, all the US embassy cables revealed was that American diplomats like to gossip, which is the stuff of modern intelligence, is gossip. And they're a bit two-faced. Well, we need that. I mean, big deal. Nothing revealed materially threatened US security, well, with the other exception of some agents in Afghanistan, which Sandy was quite overly dismissive of the impact on them. But what it really illustrated was quite how embarrassingly easy it is for government systems in the modern era run on digitized data communication networks, how they can be instantly, totally compromised globally by, in effect, a maverick employee with a memory stick who then hands it over to a journalist with a website. And it's, in effect, it's for that and the threat that poses of what Private Bradley Manning did and Julian Assange then went on to do. That's why these guys are really, as far as I can see, they're reaping the wrath of the United States, or they certainly have been, its agencies and corporate backers. Now, we see that Assange has got some level of protection from the Ecuadorian embassy, in order to prevent himself from getting extradited to Sweden on charges of rape and molestation. He claims that his extradition from the UK to Sweden in itself is just a great big smear campaign. And actually, once he's in Sweden, it'd be far easier for the United States to extradite him from Sweden over to the United States order for the US to then charge him with whatever it is they think they can charge him with. And really that's the level it's at in the US. They want to do him for something. They think they might be able to do him under the 1917 Espionage Act. Possibly, they hope. I'm not sure I totally go with that side of Assange's claim in terms of why he's being extradited to Sweden. I think he does have possibly something to answer over there. But also I think actually if the United States wanted to extradite him from England, they could do it as easily. They would just hand him over and say, off we go. Well, the real point is, with modern extradition within European Union itself, but also the relationship with the European Union, particularly Britain and the United States, that you don't really need to present any evidence of any wrongdoing to be demonstrated for an arrest warrant to have you extradited and spirited across Europe or across the Atlantic to the US. It's just saying, well, we want to talk to them about this. Hand them over, off they go. Allegations alone from the United States suffice, presumption of innocence be damned, for global corporations MasterCard, Amazon and PayPal to withdraw all of their support services from WikiLeaks when the MC Cables scandals that became first was brought to the public attention. What this further goes to prove is that in this globalized online world, any data of any level of security can be compromised. But equally, anybody daring to do so, and any of their associates, will find their rights revoked anywhere in the world. Their lives shut down, in effect, from anywhere in the world. Online data and all their identities retrieved from anywhere in the world, and themselves spirited from anywhere to anywhere in the world, on the basis of allegations alone. Well, not even that. CIA's extraordinary rendition program very effectively used to disappear anybody dodgy, which was sort of defined as anybody who looked like an Arab, from anywhere in the world, and fly them to ex-Soviet torture camps, where they'd be kept and done over for many, many years. This is not only somewhat distasteful, it was highly illegal, and for that reason it was done under the cover of darkness. Now these days they slightly epped it up. They don't bother with extradition or with extraordinary rendition so much as drones to go and zap anybody they don't like the look of, and anybody who happens to have the malevolent misfortune to be within the range of a drone blast. But Assange's persecution could be argued is rendition but revamped for white-collar, middle-class white men. And this is being done in the full public glare of front page 24/7 rolling news. And we all think that's fine, fair enough, go ahead. And we accept it. And so we accept it, or do very little, when the US military invades a foreign country in the middle of the night and kills an unarmed suspect, with the President watching the entire thing, live stream footage, like it's the ultimate reality show, like it's Big Brother, before the troops then take the body of Osama bin Laden, dump it in the sea, and then come back and then tell a load of lies about what actually happened. I mean, this is mafia law. Osama bin Laden may well have been traced through a mobile phone call made by Foolish Aid, and US surveillance picked up on it, and then they went and did it. But if they got close enough to shoot him, and they had the means to carry his body and countless computers away, surely they were close enough to gas him into unconsciousness, or taser him, or do anything, whatever it took in order to bring him back to the United States for trial, in order to actually give him time to defend himself against the charge that he did 9/11, because in the first instance he said he didn't do it. And I think it's a hell of a statement, as it were, to knock down several skyscrapers and kill 3,000 people and then say it wasn't me. I don't know. But also, I thought the fundamental basis of our lives in the West, what made us civilized, was the fact that we do things by trial. Maybe I'm just being naive. And unless these